Hello. Welcome to Common Censored. My name is Lee Camp. I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
That was a mixture of the two. So, as some of you may have already noticed, if you looked at the length of this podcast, this is a short one this week. We are drowning in work. We're also traveling soon, and so there's a lot going on. So we apologize, but this is a short episode. However, considering I'm dealing with you like you're my mom guilting me. Since we've done 118, 119 episodes, and almost never missed a week. How dare you? I'm acting like you guys are upset. I don't know. But so we figured we'd give you at least something.
It's the Jewish guilt preempting.
Yeah. The Jewish atheist, the Jutheist.
The Jutheist. That sounds inappropriate somehow.
But yes, we after 118 episodes, I think it's okay. I think we can get away with a half an episode this time.
If you need to step away for a minute to
I might
self-flagellate. I know that's Catholic, but I
might have to beat myself.
Bridging the gap here.
Beat myself for a minute, but well, I don't know. The Orthodox Jews do the tefillin where they yank the leather straps on their arms really tight. So that's some similarities.
That's true. And no matter how hot it gets in New York, I've seen them walking around in the full wool jacket. Mm-hmm. And the pants and the hat. Mm-hmm. That, to me, I think I would rather whip myself,
those are the Hasids, yeah. And I actually used to live in Williamsburg, but not as part of their group. I was not in that cult. I was not in the cult. I just visited.
They didn't even like you. Because you're not Jewish enough.
Yeah. Hasids consider, like, even when I was a practicing Reform Jew, like I'm like 18 years old or something, they would have considered us Christian. That'd be just... enjoy your Christianity because you're not on their level. But anyway, we're getting off track here. I wanted to say that, so this is a short episode, but we are hoping to bring you a regular length episode next week. And here's another point that I thought this would be a good time to make since we're giving you a short episode is nowadays you can almost get a new podcast from one or the other of us on 5 days a week. We're up to 5 days a week because we have Common Censored you guys can listen to. We have it's called Government Secrets. I do with Graham Elwood. I just started that one, so that's Tuesday. There's your Tuesday. For Wednesday, we often have Act Out, right?
No, that's Friday.
Okay, well, I was just naming days. So, anyway,
well, now that we live in this alternate space where it's just day, then fine.
True.
Wednesday is Friday.
True. Okay, we'll save Act Out for Friday. So we got Eleanor's podcast on Friday. So that just leaves Wednesday and Thursday. The Moment of Clarity podcast, which is the audio of both Redacted Tonight and Redacted VIP. So it's over an hour long. That you can listen to on Wednesdays. And
I'm starting a new podcast with Carla Bergman, the co-author of Joyful Militancy. I don't know which day of the week that will be, but look for that towards the end of summer.
There you go.
So
there is 5 days a week podcast straight through. Even for now, you can do 4 days a week of podcasts by one or the other of us. You can also have the live stream often on Fridays. Unfortunately, not this Friday. Can't do live stream this week for those of you who've been tuning in. But anyway, let's get started since we only have a half an hour. Let's dive into this. As many of you know, obviously, or maybe all of you know, COVID-19 raging through the country, worse than ever before. We are one of the global hotspots. We have the most cases by far in the world, although Brazil is catching up to us. It's just an utter catastrophe. And now it's hitting areas that didn't have great hospitals to begin with, unlike New York City that had tons of hospitals. Now it's hitting places that didn't even have great hospitals to begin with, and they can't handle the load. And 140,000, I think, killed so far. Really is fucking awful. A complete lack of leadership on all levels. And other countries, it's not quite like that in a lot of other countries.
Well, and it's not just other countries, because we can say like, oh, look at Norway, or Italy is on the downturn now as well, because you kind of expect that, right? Like, we never hear people talking shit about Norway, like, oh, that democratically socialist country, that's disgusting. But how about this one for a headline? Cuba celebrates no local transmission of COVID-19 for the first time in 4 months. So, for the first time this past Sunday, Cuba announced that there were no new domestic cases of COVID-19, as most of the country has moved into the final phase of resuming normal activities whilst still practicing social distancing with masks. So, if you're not familiar, Cuba has been living through economic warfare thanks to the United States for more than 50 years, more than half a century. And there have definitely been, obviously, like hot war attempts, not just Cold War bullshittery, but there have been hot war attempts in that time as well. And through all of it, Cuba has not only survived, but they have thrived, particularly in the healthcare industry and the healthcare part of their life. Cuban doctors,
free healthcare there,
right? Cuban doctors are world renowned, and I'm not being hyperbolic about that. Like, legit, Cuba sent doctors to fight Ebola during the outbreak that happened there. Just recently today, I saw in Italy they had put up a giant projection on. It was like I think it was a cathedral dome. I'm gonna guess cathedral just because Italy has a shit ton of them. But on this huge dome, they had put "Grazie Cuba," which means "thank you, Cuba," and that's in reference to the Cuban doctors that came to Italy to help them. So Cuba not only
probably
is
to spy.
right, because spying on Italians undergoing COVID is juicy shit. But so Cuba sent doctors to China as well. So Cuba is not only surviving the coronavirus, they are helping other people survive COVID, all while still being strapped for cash under the extreme economic warfare imposed on them by the richest country in the world, while we can't seem to get this shit under control. I mean, the juxtaposition there, the disparity of care for people is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, very true. And they have drugs that have proven fairly effective in helping treat people, helping people get out of the hospital more quickly.
Right.
One of them is interferon something.
Interferon, which real quick, that was actually used during the SARS outbreak, whenever that was, to 90 whatever.
2000.
During the SARS outbreak, that was used to battle SARS, which is actually another type of coronavirus. So Cuba has had the answer. I mean, interferon is not like a cure-all, but they have had the answer to treating this and trying to mitigate this for quite some time.
And granted, Cuba has some problems like any country has problems, but imagine this. Those doctors go to medical school for basically free, and then they treat people, and the people get care for basically free. Could you imagine such a thing? Meanwhile, in the U.S., was it 50-80% of bankruptcies are due to medical care? Something I quoted on my show recently is they did a study, and people who have new cases of cancer within, I think, 2 years, something like 60% have exhausted all their savings.
Right, and the other side of this, which is interesting, somebody brought this up in a call that I was doing for mutual aid the other day, where we always get some feedback from local doctors in the mutual aid calls. And for those who are unaware, Washington, D.C. is leading the nation in racial disparity with regards to coronavirus.
Yes!
We're number one. It's also the fastest gentrifying city in the nation, so woo! But the interesting, like, because people sometimes will talk about racism in the healthcare system, but they talk about it basically from the perspective of the patient. But the interesting point that was brought up this past week, or whenever that was on a day, was that the people who have access to medical training, as you notedly, the doctors in Cuba get trained as doctors for free, but who has access to the exorbitant amount of money that it takes to be trained as a doctor? It's predominantly rich white folks. So racism in the U.S. healthcare system is not only with regards to the patients, but it's the doctors who then go to medical school, and then they're confronted with, folks who aren't white, who have different backgrounds and different and different susceptibility to different diseases, and they are treated vastly different in that healthcare system.
Right. So this is one of the standard ways that systemic racism entrenches our class structure, and a lot of people don't realize this or take notice of this. But if you are poorer, it's less likely you are going to, even no matter how much you want to, no matter how smart you may be, no matter how hard a worker you may be, it's far less likely you're going to be able to succeed in some of these fields, such as doctor, lawyer. Those cost tons of money. And another one is having anything to do with Congress. Obviously, there are Congress people who ran for office, and then there's a whole fucking industrial world around Congress that is people who are higher ups on their staffs and things like that. And in order to get like an internship at Congress, you get paid nothing over the span of, 2-3 months at least. If you're doing a summer internship, you get paid nothing. How are you going to afford to live in Washington, D.C. if you're getting paid nothing? Well, most people who do those internships are people that come from money, that come from at least some level of money. So you end up with a kind of financial barrier to be an intern in Congress, which then allows you to get a job in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. So, these little steps that make sure that our class structure remains the way it is.
Yeah.
So let's move on to a story I'm sure everyone is thinking about, which is Portland, Oregon. We've talked about this a little before, but it keeps updating every day. Obviously the unmarked vans grabbing people off the street. We've now found out that these are DHS under Department of Homeland Security, part of NDAA, and they are grabbing people without suspicion, arresting them, throwing them into unmarked minivans, and then taking them to a federal courthouse. And then if the person demands to speak to a lawyer, they eventually let them go. But that's not supposed to be legal. And the mayor of Portland is taking them to court, and people are outraged. I mean, this is straight out of the fascist playbook. So now the protests in Portland have grown like exponentially, and you have the what's the name of the moms group that's fighting back? The Portland moms are fighting back, and they actually have pushed out the federal troops, at least push them back a bunch so that they're kind of cornered at this federal courthouse. And it at least so far, I mean, granted, this could change day to day, but so far it seems like the people are winning this battle.
Well, and this really speaks to the kind of the kind of response that you get when the state pushes back, which is where I get a lot of hope from, because when you see the state acting in this way, you are going to create more protesters. But I just
like gremlins. I used to say this about Occupy. We're like gremlins. You spray us instead of water, you spray us with pepper spray, and we multiply.
People under 30 are not going to understand that reference. It's okay, though. So I want to circle back real quick to the NDAA, because folks might also not remember this or may not even have heard of it, because it's one of those things that kind of slipped under the radar. It wasn't really talked about a lot in corporate media, as is the case with shifts toward fascism like this.
Because when it was going under Obama, that was the good kind.
It's the happy kind of indefinite detention.
Happy kind.
So what happened was on December 31st, 2011, Barack Obama signed the NDAA, which is short for the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a fancy way of saying we bring the military to your doorstep. Section 1021 of the NDAA allows for the president to detain anyone he wants for any reason, without a trial, without a lawyer, without ever seeing any family member again, to be held anywhere in the world indefinitely.
And the hilarious thing is, well, one of the many hilarious things about this is when Obama signed this, Obama, before he was president, was a constitutional law professor.
Yeah.
And so now he's signing into law something that is clearly unconstitutional. And the articles all said when he signed it, he's signing it with reservations. And to me, that is
It's kind of like saying, I brutally murdered this person, but with reservations.
But I didn't like it. I didn't I want you to know I didn't like it. But to me, that is basically the entirety of the difference often between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Exactly.
Is with the Democrats, you get at the end of the headline on the news story, you get with reservations. And you go, oh, thank God. They had remorse about this.
Right. Yeah, no, it's absolutely grotesque, and it's so important. I've seen for folks who want to see, definitely gonna put the trigger warning out there. However, but if you want to see images and video of what's been going on in Portland, I definitely recommend Redfish Stream. There have been some great videos.
Is that a website? Twitter?
I've been watching it on Instagram, but I'm sure they have all of these social medias. But I've just been seeing it on Instagram.
Do they have the mines? How about the Steemits? How about the Glick-Glocks and the Gobbledygooks?
They're working on the gobbledygooks. But yeah, so it's really important that we not just keep our eyes out for this, but that we also support. And this is something that Lee doesn't know this, but I've just kind of decided that this should be our next donation for our live stream. Because folks on the ground really could use help.
I was gonna say we should donate to professional wrestling. So this sounds better though.
So there's a bail. There's a bail fund, which is the Venmo is at Defense Fund PDX. P as in Portland, D as in dog, and X as in xylophone.
Oh, because isn't that their airport code?
It might be. I know that there are some other organizations that use PDX. Medics, Rose Hip Medics, so you can Venmo them at rosehip-medics. And food.
It is their airport code.
There you go.
I'm so smart.
And I don't know if this is like a Cash App or what, but food is $riot ribs, which that makes me happy. And this is, I've shared this on my Instagram. If you want to check that out at Activist Eleanor, you can see it there. You can also, see other people that have posted it. But we definitely should keep supporting Portland, keep sharing the information, along with the content warnings, but keep sharing information about what's going on the ground there, because people need to see what our country is capable of, because people talk about this concept of fascism is so nebulous. You're never going to get there. The U.S. could never be there. But in the words of Mussolini himself, you should really call fascism corporatism, because it is the combination of the state and corporate power. So we've had that for quite some time. What we're doing now is we're militarizing it to a larger and more intense extent, because unrest is becoming so dire because of the corporatism that is forcing people into these dire situations where they don't have food, shelter, access to healthcare or education or anything. So
and Trump has a clear tendency towards fascism, and this is what those of us who were furious about NDAA when it was first signed said this exact thing. We said, listen, for all of you out there who love Obama, okay, fine. You love Obama. He's wonderful. He's sweet. He farts unicorns. What is that? The things he's signing, though, give these powers to the next president and the next president. So are you certain that whoever comes after Obama is going to be a nice, wonderful guy who doesn't abuse NDAA? Yeah. Now, of course, you and I know that Obama was not a nice, wonderful guy, but I was trying to speak to those liberals who are like, as long as it has a beautiful face and an intellectual, and
eloquent.
He says, with reservations, then it's fine. And it's like, what about the guy who comes next? Well, here we are. We're at the fucking egomaniacal, narcissistic man-child who came after Obama, and it's not pretty. And one other point I wanted to make about this is, so Trump's threatening to do this in other cities. We're kind of all waiting with bated breath to see whether that manifests, whether, in every city we start seeing these jackboot thugs show up. And in New York City, I wasn't even paying much attention to this, but there was an occupation outside City Hall in terms of defunding the police. And the occupation had dwindled a little in recent weeks. Obviously, with more media coverage, you get more people. And so it was down to between 50 and 100 people, but they were seriously occupying. You know, they had tents and things outside City Hall in New York City. Now, de Blasio, who is a Democrat, but he is the most weak-willed, you know, for a 7-foot-tall dude, he is the, you know, like I like to say, spine of an arthritic jellyfish. And he just falls over. He's like one of those wind guys outside the used car dealerships. He just falls over with a blow of a strong breeze. And so he was kind of allowing this occupation to proceed, meaning he didn't send and he didn't tell NYPD to go and fire stun grenades at them. But then Trump made the lightest threat that he's going to send these federal troops into people's cities, into New York City specifically, I think he named, as well as Chicago and stuff. And de Blasio today, or maybe it was late yesterday, the NYPD stormed in and beat and arrested and kicked out the remaining occupation outside City Hall. And it's like that's all it took was Trump saying that he might do this. And de Blasio was like, all right, send in the thugs to kick the ass of the peaceful protesters that are demanding we defund the largest police force in, I think, the world. Definitely United States, but I think the world.
Well, it's larger
billions.
than most militaries.
Yeah, it's something.
Sake.
Bloomberg bragged it was the 7th largest military in the world. It's billions of dollars, over $6 billion spent on it a year, and you've got 50 to 100 peaceful protesters saying, let's defund this thing, and they needed to beat that down and suppress it and arrest it because even that is dangerous.
Yeah, and actually here in D.C. too, there was an instance, during the course of the uprisings where there were people in unmarked uniforms that were harassing
Apparently
protesters.
It was the Texas Bureau of Prisons that they
Sure,
bought,
why not?
That they fucking brought in.
They trucked people. I mean, but this is like, we have to recognize how interconnected this shit is, and also how easy it is for them to move these pawns, move these pieces, their servants and their protectors. And we have to remain vigilant, not just in terms of protecting each other in the streets, but not thinking that like, oh, well, de Blasio said that he was going to defund the NYPD, so all is well, let's go home. No. Like, that's exactly the plan, right? They want you to think that because they fucking painted Black Lives Matter on the street somewhere, that actually rings true in terms of policy, but it doesn't. And it's
you give us some bedazzling and okay, then then I might acquiesce.
If there's glitter, fine.
Yeah, if there's glitter.
Which, side note, I was super sad when I found out how environmentally destructive glitter is.
Oh yeah, glitter's terrible.
So then there was
because then all the fish end up glittery and they can't find a mate because all the mates are like, dude, what are you wearing?
That's the main problem.
That's the main problem.
There's a LGBTQ account that I follow on Instagram that has a link to biodegradable glitter. So I can't remember the name of it, but it's out there, folks.
And doesn't your mother buy biodegradable BB guns?
No, she has
BBs?
biodegradable bullets, which is so my mother. So she has a deer problem, but she also has like the worst aim of anyone I've ever met.
She really just wants to scare the deer away, so she bought these bullets that biodegrade.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to have to like walk around and like pick up casings, which fine, but I'm just waiting. I'm honestly just waiting for because my dad comes and visits sometimes. I'm honestly just waiting for him to be like walking across the property and she accidentally like sets off the gun and he gets shot with a biodegradable bullet. I'm honestly just waiting for that to happen.
She's a bit of a feral mountain person. A little bit.
Me or my mother?
Your mother.
No, she's not feral. But she's a mountain person.
All right. Speaking of mountain people, I think. No, maybe not. Let's go on to DAPL and KXL.
Yeah, no, actually, that's very much flat land.
True, it's flat out there.
So this is something that was shared with me by a comrade, Mark Tilson. And I wanted to share this with you all because it's been made public, and they are asking allies and comrades to share it. Mark Tilson is a member, is Oglala Lakota, and fought very hard during the DAPL fight in his ancestral homelands, and was part of putting together this eviction notice for the Keystone XL and Dakota Access Pipeline, notice to vacate from the Ochedi-Sakowin land. So basically, I'll just read a little bit of this eviction notice. From the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 acknowledges the sovereignty of the Ochedi-Sakowin, legally known as the Sioux Nation of Indians, over our lands as long as the grass shall grow and the rivers shall flow. That's taken from the treaty. The treaty states, quote, and this is actually what it says: if bad men among the whites or among other people subject to the authority of the United States shall commit any wrong upon the person or property of the Indians, the United States will, upon proof made to the agent and forwarded to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs at Washington City, proceed at once to cause the offender to be arrested and punished according to the laws of the United States, and also reimburse the injured person for the loss sustained. Wow. One could definitely say that, be it the tactics used by police and law enforcement out there, literally injuring, or the injury to the land, that this treaty perfectly states does not fucking belong to the United States government. One could make the argument that that these pipeline companies should be prosecuted with the full force of the U.S. law according to this treaty, and that the Ochedi-Sakowin people should be reimbursed for the pain and suffering that they have had to undergo.
Here I was ranting and railing about how I don't want evictions right now. And I think we should have a strike, but I support this eviction.
Well, so this was kind of made in response to that. Mark also made a note about how there are evictions happening in their ancestral homelands right now because of because of this economic crisis. And so this was also a bit of a response to that. Like, fuck you, how dare you evict indigenous peoples from our homes? Get your colonialist, imperialist bullshit out of our home. Mm-hmm. So this is something that's circulating. You can find it in a few different places. A lot of ally organizations have shared it around. So if you just look up Dakota Access and Keystone Pipeline eviction notice, you can find it. They're asking folks to share it. So please do so.
Absolutely. Should I skip down to the quick note on the Russian interference report?
Quick note. Nope.
Yep. Good.
All right.
For those of you adjusting your audio right now,
this is just tired brain.
So we'll wrap up with this story, which is incredible. This shit keeps going on, but the UK just put out a hard-fought, long worked on report about Russian interference in their elections and in Brexit. And I haven't read it, and I'm not going to read it, but
because you value your brain cells.
Because I value my brain. But I've heard some analysis. They did some good analysis on Loud and Clear and some other places. Of course, it's hilarious. It has basically no evidence that Russia did anything to influence Brexit, whereas Cambridge Analytica, a British company partially run by Steve Bannon and funded by Robert Mercer, who funded Donald Trump's campaign, Cambridge Analytica had a massive influence on Brexit. They did a tremendous job in influencing Brexit. But the Russians had little to no impact on Brexit. I don't know if they even wanted. I don't know if they even cared about Brexit. Yeah. But beyond that, this is just the UK being like, oh, they're doing McCarthyism over in the US.
I want to play.
We want to play some too. And so they're trying to do it, and it's like hilarious. Like, they've got no evidence. So instead, what they did apparently was they put in like all the other things they don't like about Russia, which are also made up propaganda, in order to pad out the report, in order to make it look like they had something there. So they put in, the Skripal poisoning, which of course, which was done with this chemical called Novichok. That's clear. That's a Russian chemical. Like, it's a Russian government chemical to kill people. And of course, if Russia were going to take out one of their own in a assassination, how do you think they'd do it? Do you think they'd use the chemical that would make it obviously clear that it was Russia that did it? Do you think they'd shave "this was Putin" in the back of the guy's head? Like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. This would only be done by people who want to make it look like it's Russia. Like,
yeah, somebody needs to watch some Agatha Christie shit, for real.
It didn't even kill the people. It's like, it's so hilarious and
here's,
laughable.
Here's the thing. Like, it's bad what happened. Like, just because they didn't die, it doesn't mean that it's not bad. But it's like...
I'm a fan of a little light Novichok every once in a while.
A little light radiation poisoning.
This one was not radiation.
Okay, sorry. But... you have to have proof. It's like when you're a kid, because this really reminds me of children. Not even like bright children either. Like subpar children running and being like, the Santa made me do it, or it was the dog, or whatever. And it's like, well, clearly you need an opposable thumb to do that, so it wasn't the dog. But it's like, it's this childish shit where you're like, there's absolutely, not only is there no proof, but just the idea of it is so laughable. Like, why the fuck would Russia? I mean, it's just so bizarre. Right. And it has nothing to do with like whether you like Russia or not. It's like, I don't like Putin, but I also don't feel it's fair or just to just blame the guy for all of the wrongs in the world that are, for the most part, thanks to the United States government.
What makes it even more laughable is right before Russia hosted the World Cup, because this was several years ago. And the World Cup, for those of you who don't play or watch soccer, is an event nearly as big as the Olympics. It's an event nearly as big as the Olympics. Everybody in the world watches it. It is, for the country that hosts it, it is a huge fucking deal. It is great publicity for that country. And so this was a huge deal for Russia. And months beforehand, they're like, you know what? Let's assassinate a former, Russian spy or whatever he was. Let's assassinate him on British ground, British territory, in the most obviously Russian way we can come up with. It's like, what the fuck? It's so hilarious. Anyway, so they throw that in the report, and then in the report they even thank the help of Christopher Steele. Steele is the famous, now infamous, author of the Steele dossier. That was that hilarious report on Donald Trump that said, like, it was a bunch of fake things. Look, I hate Donald Trump, all right, but it was fake stuff. Like, no one's been able to prove any of it. It was like, oh, he was in a Russian hotel getting peed on by hookers, and so Putin has videotapes, and he's going to blackmail him to get him to do whatever he wants. And it was shit like that. And they've never been able to prove any of it. And now, even for people that are kind of all in for the McCarthyism, even they are kind of like, yeah, that Steele dossier was a bit light on evidence. So even they have backed off this, and yet this UK interference report thanks Christopher Steele for his help with the report. Anyway, had to throw that in there. Did we get to the key things we wanted to?
I think we did.
Okay, some quick notes. If you feel like you got even $1 out of this episode, I think you get $1 even out of a half-hour episode. I think you did, honestly.
I think so.
Please go over to patreon.com/commoncensored. That's how we keep this show going. That's why we have no ads and there is no funding support from anyone except for you. Patreon.com/commoncensored. Also, there's no live stream this week. But you can check out for free my live comedy special. That's at leecampamerican.com. You can also check out Eleanor's movie, hardroadofhope.com. It's getting awesome reviews. Just got another great review recently. Yeah. Hardroadofhope.com. And you can check out my book. You can get 10% off with the code BPAPL. That's the initials of the title. And that's at leecampbook.com.
It's awesome.
And everything else is at artkillingapathy.com is Eleanor's site. As I said, if you this half hour just wet your noodle, is that an expression? If this just wet your noodle.
Huh. I mean, I don't think so. That sounds not like a service we offer, but
not this time. But we're thinking of upgrading.
Maybe you are. But you know what? Please, that can be another podcast that you do. I'll not be wetting any noodles.
All right. If this just whet your appetite and you want more, there are multiple other podcasts you can check out. Eleanor's is called Act Out. My new one with Graham Elwood is called Government Secrets. As far as I last checked, it is not up on podcast platforms yet. It is on Libsyn, and I post them at my website, leecamp.com. It will soon be on iTunes and all those, but if you want to just check it out and it's not up yet, go to leecamp.com. And the other, was there another podcast I was going to mention? Moment of Clarity is the other one. So you got a lot of podcasts you can check out.
You got a lot of content you can sift through.
Thank you guys so much. We will be back with a full hour episode soon. Keep fighting.
Yes, indeedy. Act out.